The man who once ruled the music industry is now brewing alcohol behind prison walls. From yacht parties in St. Tropez to sneaking Fanta and apples into a sock just to get buzzed. The contrast is almost too surreal to believe. Sean "Diddy" Combs, once a billionaire mogul with the world at his feet, now stands accused of breaking prison rules just weeks after promising a judge he had turned his life around. Sobriety? That was the headline. But what prison guards allegedly found fermenting in his cell told a much different story. Now rumors are flying, inmates are talking, and Diddy's redemption story might be unraveling faster than anyone expected. So what really happened inside that prison? And how did one of the most powerful men in entertainment end up here, tangled in lies, lawsuits, and now illegal booze? Let's break down the entire story. There was a time when Diddy didn't just dominate hip-hop, he defined an era. Bad Boy Records wasn't just a label, it was a movement. He introduced the world to legends like the notorious B.I.G., Maze, and Faith Evans. His fashion line, Sean John, stormed into department stores. Cîroc vodka became practically synonymous with his name. And when Forbes listed the highest-paid entertainers on the planet, Diddy wasn't just on the list, he topped it. Private jets, multi-million-dollar mansions, a net worth brushing $1 billion. He wasn't just successful, he was untouchable. But behind that polished smile and designer suits was a storm quietly building for years. Back in 2024, the first cracks began to show in a very public way. Diddy was arrested and hit with serious federal charges. Not for trafficking, as many had speculated, but for violating the Mann Act. Specifically, 2 counts of transporting individuals across state lines to engage in prostitution. It was a striking fall, legally, financially, and reputationally. But what made headlines wasn't just the charges, it was Diddy's own confession. He admitted to spiraling into darkness, saying he was consumed by drugs, excess, and power. Still, there was a plan, a rehab-focused sentence, clean time ahead, a shot at redemption. Sounds smooth, right? Except the signs were already there. This wasn't going to be a quiet, reflective sentence. Behind the scenes, whispers started to circulate. Rumors of instability, broken promises, and growing tensions inside the prison. Diddy hadn't even settled into his bunk, and already he was making waves. The mogul turned inmate wasn't adjusting. He was unraveling. In the final moments before his sentencing, Sean "Diddy" Combs didn't walk in as the flashy mogul the world knew. He came in quiet, humbled, and, according to him, sober for the first time in 25 years. Standing before the judge, he didn't flash a smile or wear designer shades. Instead, he delivered a raw, handwritten letter, a confession of collapse wrapped in desperation. In it, he admitted, "I got lost in the journey. Lost in the drugs and the excess." That one line hit like a bomb. He spoke of parties that never ended, pain he never processed, and power that blinded him. He painted a picture of a man trying to claw his way out of his own legacy. But what stood out even more was how deeply he seemed to believe in a second chance. He told the court he had been reading, learning, meeting with therapists, that he was preparing for a new version of himself. One that didn't rely on substances or control. He wanted to face his demons, not run from them. And for a moment, it felt like the redemption arc had finally begun. Even his legal team leaned into it, requesting he be sent to FCI Fort Dix, a low-security facility known for its drug rehab program, saying he needed structure, not punishment. The judge agreed. The media softened. Some headlines even began to shift. Diddy faces the music, or Sean Combs seeks sobriety, not sympathy. For years, he controlled the narrative. But this time, he surrendered it. And strangely, that made people listen. At least for a moment. Because what happened next would throw everything into question. Just weeks after vowing to stay clean, Diddy was allegedly caught making booze in his prison cell. Seriously. Sources say officials at FCI Fort Dix found a 55-year-old mogul with a small stash of pruno, a crude, illegal prison-made alcohol that's as toxic as it sounds. Forget champagne and Cîroc. This recipe was straight out of survival mode. Fanta soda, sugar packets, and some smuggled apples left to ferment in secret for over 2 weeks. That's not an accident. That's intent. According to insiders via TMZ, guards discovered Diddy actively drinking the brew, not just hiding it, but indulging. Staff were stunned. After all, this was the same man who passionately pled for rehab, told the court he was finally free of his addictions, and asked for mercy based on a new commitment to sobriety. To say it sent shockwaves through the facility is an understatement. There was even immediate internal discussion about removing him from his current unit entirely, possibly isolating him from the general population. But just as quickly as those plans surfaced, they were shut down. Why? No one's saying clearly. Influence? Legal pressure? Internal politics? The details are murky. But one thing became obvious. Diddy's image as a changed man was already starting to crack. The so-called clean slate, already stained with the sugary stench of homemade hooch. If the Courtroom Confession was the beginning of a comeback, the Pruno incident might have been the first nail in the coffin. And yet, this wasn't the only contradiction unraveling behind bars. It wasn't just the act. It was the timing that made it almost unbelievable. Diddy had barely settled into his prison cot when a Pruno bust happened. Just weeks earlier, he stood in court, eyes down, voice shaking, begging for a second chance. He swore he was done with the chaos. No more drugs. No more denial. Just him, his regrets, and a rehab plan. So how did that vow fall apart so fast? The contradiction couldn't be clearer. 1 minute, he's telling a judge he's ready to change. The next, he's allegedly brewing bathtub liquor like a bored teenager at summer camp. It's not just disappointing, it's damning. And naturally, the question people started asking was any of it real? Was the sobriety speech a desperate strategy to secure softer sentencing? Was jail rehab just a tactic, not a turning point? What's worse is that the incident didn't happen a year into his sentence. It happened barely a month in. No time to reflect, no healing arc, just a crash back into old habits. Which makes you wonder, did he ever plan to stay clean at all? For the public, it shattered the short-lived illusion of recovery. The emotional letter, the therapy talk, the "I was sick on drugs" statement, it suddenly felt more like smoke and mirrors than self-awareness. This wasn't rock-bottom redemption. It was rock-bottom relapse, and fast. And just when things were starting to spiral inside the prison walls, new storms were brewing outside. From platinum plaques to prison chow lines, Sean Diddy Combs is now calling FCI Fort Dix home. Tucked away in New Jersey, this low-security federal prison isn't exactly Alcatraz. There's no razor wire crawling up the fences, and the inmates aren't hardened lifers. But make no mistake, this isn't a luxury retreat. It's still prison. And for someone who once owned a private jet fleet and threw million-dollar birthday parties, it's a monumental fall from grace. Diddy didn't land here by accident, either. His legal team fought hard for this specific facility. Why? Fort Dix hosts the Residential Drug Abuse Program, RDAP, one of the few federal initiatives designed to help inmates tackle addiction head-on. They argued this was key to his recovery. Part of the transformation he claimed was already in motion. They also pointed to something more personal, his family. Fort Dix makes it easier for them to visit regularly, a quiet advantage in a system that often keeps inmates hundreds of miles from everyone they know. The court agreed. Judge Arun Subramanian approved the request, noting Diddy's public commitment to changing his life and taking accountability for past actions. It sounded like the beginning of a comeback, a controlled space for healing, therapy, and eventual redemption. But now, after the Pruno discovery and mounting media whispers, Fort Dix feels less like a stop on the road to recovery and more like the front row seat to a slow-motion collapse. Inside, he's just another inmate. But outside, the world's still watching, and the cameras aren't going away. Before the prison jumpsuit, before the headlines about illegal Pruno and failed sobriety, there was that courtroom moment. A 12-minute speech that many believed could mark the beginning of something real. Not just a legal maneuver, but a man owning his wreckage. Diddy stood before the court and didn't mince words. He looked the judge straight in the eye and said something few expected to hear out loud. My domestic violence will be a heavy burden I must carry. There was no deflection. He didn't blame the media, enemies, or his status. Instead, he peeled back the curtain, admitting bluntly, "I was sick on drugs and out of control." The words were heavier than anything he'd rapped or posted in the last decade. This wasn't the Diddy who danced in shiny suits or hyped Cîroc on Instagram. This was a man visibly shaken, stripped of fame, laying bare an internal war with addiction, anger, and a past he said he could no longer ignore. He spoke of therapy, of books, of painful revelations. He admitted he had failed not just others, but himself. And for a moment, the room believed it. It's rare to see someone with that kind of power step off the pedestal and openly say, "I need help." That speech was supposed to set the tone for healing, accountability, and maybe redemption. But now, just months later, that speech feels more like a haunting echo than a promise. With the reported prison booze incident casting doubt on his sincerity, it's hard not to wonder, was it raw honesty or just a brilliant performance? Because if that moment was real, then what went wrong so fast? And if it wasn't, then we may have watched not a confession, but a carefully constructed illusion, just another show from an expert in managing public perception. Either way, one thing's becoming painfully clear: words don't matter anymore. Actions do. Just when it seemed like Diddy's past had finally caught up to him, another case burst into the spotlight. Jonathan Hay, a Florida man and music producer, filed a shocking civil lawsuit accusing Diddy of sexual battery and false imprisonment. The alleged incident? It dates back to 2020, during a project reportedly connected to the estate of the notorious B.I.G. According to Hay, what started as a professional collaboration spiraled into something far darker and far more personal. He claims he was assaulted and held against his will, and that nobody stepped in because, in his words, Sean Diddy Combs was untouchable. That phrase alone hit hard. For decades, Diddy was viewed as being above the noise, shielded by money, fame, and influence. But now, those same shields are being dismantled piece by piece, lawsuit by lawsuit. Hay also revealed the psychological toll the alleged assault had on him, opening up about severe depression, isolation, and even suicidal thoughts. He called it the ultimate betrayal, saying he struggled silently because fighting against someone as powerful as Combs felt hopeless. And here's the thing. Unlike the federal charges that landed Diddy behind bars, this is not a resolved case. It's fresh, ongoing. Another legal storm gathering while he's already fighting to preserve whatever remains of his legacy. Critics are now asking, is this just the beginning of a longer pattern unraveling? Because if one thing's becoming clear, this isn't just Diddy doing time for past crimes. It's Diddy being reevaluated in real time, as more stories emerge and more people step forward. And this is far from the last battle he'll face. Even behind bars, Diddy isn't done fighting battles because the courtroom drama hasn't stopped just because the cell door closed. While he's currently serving a 50-month federal sentence, Diddy's legal team is already working overtime, having filed an official appeal to challenge both the conviction and the length of his sentence. They're hoping to reduce the time or overturn it entirely. But here's the twist most headlines miss. Despite the internet rumors and speculation, Diddy was actually cleared of the most serious charges. No conviction for sex trafficking. No racketeering conspiracy. That matters legally and publicly. What he was convicted of were 2 counts under the Mann Act, technically for transporting individuals for illegal activity, a charge that has historically been used across various high-profile moral cases. In Diddy's case, the court focused on prostitution-related travel that allegedly exploited his wealth and access. Still, even with those key acquittals, his legal headaches are far from over. Because while the criminal trial might be past tense, the civil lawsuits are just beginning, and they're piling up. The Jonathan Hay case is only one of several ongoing investigations and claims that threaten both his finances and what's left of his public image. Attorneys close to the case say more filings could surface in the coming months, especially as details from past settlements, NDAs, and former employees begin leaking out. So even if his sentence is somehow reduced, there could be years of legal warfare ahead. Right now, Diddy's not counting down days to freedom. He's counting court dates. And at this point, the battle for his legacy might be harder than the fight for his release. As if the story couldn't get any more surreal. Now, there are whispers of a presidential pardon. According to TMZ, insiders at FCI Fort Dix claim that Diddy has been telling fellow inmates he's banking on Trump, as in former President Donald Trump, to pardon him as early as 2025 or 2026. Yeah, you heard that right. The rumor has sparked chaos on social media and confusion even among his closest critics. Could one of hip-hop's biggest moguls be quietly hedging his bets on political favors to shorten his sentence? It might sound wild, but it's not impossible. Trump has previously issued high-profile pardons to celebrities and controversial figures, from Lil Wayne and Kodak Black to political allies, Wall Street players, and even former military contractors. So the idea of Diddy hoping for a similar move isn't out of thin air. But here's the kicker. There's no official request on record. No formal documentación. No legal confirmation. Just word-of-mouth chatter from inside the prison walls. Still, this adds a strange new layer to Diddy's unfolding story. A man who once dictated trends in hip-hop, now allegedly gambling his future on a political long shot. Whether it's desperation, PR control, or just jailhouse talk, the intent is clear. He's looking for any way out fast. And in the court of public opinion, that keeps everyone asking, is he setting up a master play behind the scenes? Or is this just another sign he's losing control? For decades, Sean Diddy Combs was more than just a celebrity. He was a symbol of black excellence, a blueprint for building from the ground up. From Harlem beginnings to chart-topping hits, billion-dollar deals, and cultural influence that shaped generations, Diddy wasn't just successful, he was untouchable. But now, that legacy is hanging by a thread. The mogul who once turned everything he touched to gold is now watched behind glass, not through a camera lens, but through a courtroom's eye and the unforgiving microscope of public doubt. Gone is the flawless image, replaced by contradictions. A man who pledged sobriety, caught allegedly sipping prison-made booze. A voice calling for redemption, while new lawsuits and grim stories claw at his reputation. A heartfelt courtroom confession now overshadowed by whispers of manipulation. And the real question isn't just what Diddy has done. It's whether anyone believes him anymore. People can handle scandal. They can even forgive mistakes. But what the public doesn't tolerate is feeling lied to. And right now, Diddy's story feels less like redemption and more like a slowly unraveling script. Yes, he still has wealth. Yes, he's influential. But legacy? That's something money can't fix. And right now, his legacy is on life support. Whether he's honestly trying to change or just playing the system to stay ahead of the law, only one thing's certain. If nothing changes, neither will the ending. From bad boy records to bad decisions behind bars, Sean Combs' story isn't just a fall from grace. It's an unraveling in real time. Once a cultural juggernaut, now a convicted inmate making headlines for all the wrong reasons. The courtroom apologies, the prison scandals, the lawsuits stacking higher by the day. It all feels like a legacy caught in a tailspin with no clear end in sight.